Hello, welcome to episode 21 of the Snowboard Instructor podcast. This episode we have Scott Anfang, an established New Zealand examiner, co-founder of Go Snow and tour guide at Mint Tours. In this episode we talk about his fun experiences through the New Zealand system, his ideas and creation of the Go Snow application, and his time spending in the Mint Tours and how that works.
This episode is sponsored by Watch and Ride, an online snowboard school which helps improve your shredding. Visit Watch and Ride and use the code Snowboard Instructor Podcast to get 25% off your order. Thanks so much for listening and hope you enjoy the episode. Oh yeah, so we also got the Ski Instructor podcast. That's a good one actually to listen to if you get the chance to. It's more European based, but it's pretty good. But yeah, thanks for joining anyway, Scott. It's been super fun having you on. It's great for
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm just smiling.
It's great to have you on. So I mean, first question then, where did it all start in terms of snowboarding for you? What was the first time you ever saw a snowboard and was like, yeah, I want to go there?
Yeah, that's a good one. I actually was really into skateboarding when I was younger, and did a lot of like traveling and competing and doing things skating wise, and just was way into it. And it was always kind of a bummer when summer came around and we would like sneak into shopping malls at night or parking garages and find somewhere that we could skateboard in the wintertime. This was back in Minnesota where I grew up. And somebody pulled out a snowboard out of a trunk one day in a parking lot. And I was like, what is that? Like, I got to get into that. So we had two of them like amongst this circle of like 8 friends or whatever. And we started throwing them over the fence and climbing into golf courses and like sculpting little quarter pipes out of sand traps and things like that. And it was never really about, at that stage, about going to a mountain or doing any free riding. It was about going straight and hitting a jump or hitting a quarter pipe, or, it was more about that because it was closer to that tie into skateboarding, like the street skating style. And that was way before like the urban scene was up, where you were doing handrails and staircases and all that on snowboards. But it obviously evolved into that direction over the years. And this was like I will date myself here, but this was probably in 84, 85, like a long time ago.
Yeah, that'd be just like just starting up then, like with the whole snowboard culture, like for sure. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
So that was the start and the first time I saw it. And then obviously I had to go get one, and we got one, or I got one, and we started riding. And then eventually they started letting them happen, letting us bring them to the little resorts. Because when we first got it, you couldn't even go to a resort. That wasn't even an option. So then we started to be able to get on the chairlifts and do stuff at the little resorts. And all of a sudden that opened a whole nother world to what snowboarding actually was and what you could do and things like that. So it was a good time to get involved, and it's taken me a lot of places around the world and grown and shaped who I am today. But yeah, it all started on a golf course.
So how
my wheels can go around in the snow.
So how were those like first impressions, especially like on the mountain? Not necessarily to yourself, but like the community around you with all the other skiers when they saw like a snowboard for the first time. Did you get any kind of like weird reactions from that?
No, I wouldn't say weird reaction. I mean, I guess there was a little bit, but you didn't care. I mean, do you guys remember the old, I wish I had it. I have it somewhere, but there was a t-shirt that Trans World Snowboarding put out. And it was
cool.
like it's called a snowboard. Yes, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yes, I can stop. Yes, I can turn both ways. It's like the punch list of questions. Those were like the stock, like you asked how you're like, oh, what is that? And what I would relate that to most today, I don't know if you guys you get out on snow skates at all?
I've been on a snow skate once or twice. There was one yesterday with John Weatherly. He was riding a snow skate.
Yeah.
Those things.
I would equate that to what snowboarding was. You know, when you get on a snow skate, people are like, "Oh, what is that? Oh, is it hard? Can so it was like that. Back then. It was fun though.
Did you after doing that, I'm guessing you just was like, yeah, straight into it. When did you kind of start thinking about doing turns and kind of getting used to the idea of a snowboard and how it works?
Another question. Could you turn on like the old snowboards? Because now we obviously got a side cut and everything.
Yeah.
Do they have side cuts back then?
You could turn, but it wasn't like I'm gonna turn now.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I'm gonna start turning here and I'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
It was more like that, especially in the Midwest where I grew up, where it was a lot of man-made, hard, icier snow. You're not like floating in powder or anything like that. And then to answer the other question, Max, the what did you asked about getting into it and thinking about
getting used to it, yeah,
stuff like that. I mean, I honestly, I probably rode 5 or 6 years, and it was just about like bombing, hitting jumps, playing on the side a little bit before I even got into like trying to set an edge and rail a carve or anything like that. Because that just wasn't, because I didn't have too much of a skiing back. I skied once or twice, but I didn't like ski race. I didn't understand like tilting it up onto the edge or, gripping and that sensation of a carve. Then once just to flip that on its head a bit, once I learned that on a snowboard, it was like, whoa, starting to deal with pressure and bending and then all of a sudden it was a whole nother game that was different than like the skate influence.
Nice. And what was like your first snowboard? Actually, that's quite a cool one.
I know exactly what it was. It was a Damien. Do you remember? Do you guys remember
Damien Sanders?
Yeah. He had an avalanche kick was the board. It was an avalanche kick 165.
Mate, he's my favourite rider. Damien Sanders is, just because of his hard boot style sometimes.
Yep.
Oh, mate, avalanches. Avalanches, like, I haven't seen anyone with an avalanche board in ages, like an old nostalgic avalanche board. I know, like.
Do you remember they did a series that had like construction equipment on it? Do you remember that one?
No.
Like it was like it was like yellow.
Oh, okay. I think I might have seen it.
Or a bulldozer or something on it. Yeah. I saw one of those on the hill this year.
This year?
Yeah, I was like, whoa. Sometimes when you see relics like that and timepieces, you're like, you want to go and say, do you know what you actually have there? Like, you shouldn't be riding that. That should be on your wall.
Yeah, that should be like in a glass case, memorialized, all that shit. Yeah, for sure.
That's amazing. And going from that, like a first board and having it starting to go, when was like your first trip? When did you kind of really start thinking snowboarding? Why it's like, oh, I could go to some like other mountains. I could kind of like do some other kind of stuff.
I did I think I was still in high school, and I had some friends that were a little bit older, and they were going to the University of Minnesota, and they had a college ski trip through their ski club. And I don't know how I convinced my parents that it was a good idea for me to go on that trip, but I did. And we rode a bus from Minneapolis to Jackson Hole. It was like 20 some hour bus ride, whatever. And that was my first real trip out west. I had done some stuff around Michigan, Minnesota, like the UP area, more Midwest stuff. But it's fun and the culture there is cool. And it was like amazing to go ride new places. But then to go from something like that right to a Jackson Hole was like life changing. I was like, this is it, man. Like I'm moving. Like I got to do some new stuff. And there's this whole new world out there of that I can get involved with snowboarding. So that was a life changing trip for me for sure.
And how big was that kind of mountain, that slope?
Jackson Hole. Are you familiar with up in Wyoming?
No, I'm not, unfortunately.
It's all UK, so we have no way of knowing on that end. So
it's like that's like where Travis Rice and Brian Gucci and all those guys. That's like their stomping ground.
Nice.
Like, okay, I think I know what you mean. A few videos on that.
It's a big mountain, big terrain. I mean, it's got your cruisers, your groomers, but man, it's one of those places where if you die, it's one of those places where you can find yourself in trouble. And that was intriguing to me to be, because, you know, you come from Minnesota and you're just riding and you're just like top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom. Oh, let's go to the left this time. Let's go to the right. And then you get to a place like that and you see, you know, black diamond, double black diamond, cliffs, this, that. Like, and when it says closed, it's closed for a legit reason, you know?
Like it's a proper free ride resort, you'd say.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's great. And that was my introduction to the West and to snowboarding, you know, outside of the Midwest.
And going from like Jackson Hole, did you find it pretty challenging for the first time going on it? Like, what were your first impressions of that mountain?
Oh, I mean, and again, remember dating myself. This is that avalanche kickboard that I was referring to. That's the board I was riding when I was there. I'll tell you what, it was kind of funny. It was like wood screws were what you held your bindings on with, and I kept landing and pulling my bindings right out of my board, and that's when we started doing drilling right through the base and putting T-bolts in and all that stuff too. But then you had no options for changing your stance angles or anything like that. But so yeah, it was an experience for sure. And learning about equipment and equipment failures and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And yeah, it was awesome.
That avalanche board would be so hard to ride in, I'm thinking. Because, like, you'll think, like, that board, I mean, the bolts, but the board, like, it's not a wide board. It's not like a, you know, a big...
Send you, I have pictures from that trip. I'll have to share with you.
Oh, yeah, man, that'd be nice.
I shared a couple, and people were like, what snowboard is that? Like, it's pretty funny. Oh. It's one of those ones with, like, a nose this long.
Yeah.
And a tail like that.
That's long. What I was thinking. I'm like, whoa. I mean, it'd probably be all right floating in powder, sort of. But then I'm like thinking a bit turning and that. Just, yeah, that's fucking sick, man. Like, for sure.
It was good.
And if you can remember the community as well at the mountain, like how can you remember it quite vividly, or is it just something kind of in passing?
The mountain, like where I was growing up, or out at
both actually. Yeah, Jackson Hole and the mountain you were growing up. Yeah,
I mean, where I grew up, we had a handful of little resorts, and when I say little resorts, it was everything from like a Highland Hills or a Buck Hill, which is 300 vertical feet with some tow ropes and, you know, a chair, and then you'd get up. There's a few other ones around that were, you know, quite a bit bigger, but not like massive resort sizes by any means. And that at that time, if you saw a snowboarder, you probably knew them. Like,
yeah,
or, you know, like if you saw a snowboard on a car, they would be like, "What's up, man?" Like it was like a novelty. Like you just instantly created a community. And then you would always, I mean, the people that I went with are the guys I hung out with. So we had our community off the mountain, and then we'd bring it to the mountain. We didn't go to the mountain for the community at that stage because it was just us anyway. You know.
What was it like for like? And at each mountain you went, what sort of did you have any confrontations with like skiers or like this like slope shows? Was everyone mostly sort of chill by then? and sort of like accepted it? Like this is a new sport, this is a new discipline. Like, yeah, this is pretty sick.
I think at that stage it was so new that people didn't even know it's going to be a conflict. You know, it came much later.
Okay.
The conflict part came much later, and I think part of that came with more and more people getting involved in it, and all of a sudden, when a population of people grow, there's like, you know, that not everybody's as polite. You get some bad apples in there, or whatever you want to call it. So as it grew, that's when the confrontations, I think, came out more and more. And I think I've actually experienced more of that kind of stuff here, like in Colorado or in the at bigger resorts, you know, rather than the little tiny places. They tend to be a little bit more, you know, everybody's more open. It's about that community and culture. And when you're in a tourist or destination type place, there's more people from lots of different places. So again, you get different attitudes, different perceptions. So I think, you know, you actually ran into that a little bit more at some of the bigger places.
Okay, yeah, I can see that kind of working, and like, yeah, I mean, even in the dry slopes we have here in the UK, everyone's definitely more tight knit in terms of who they are, and you know, it definitely is more accepting. Whereas, of course, let's say you go to, I mean,
France.
France, for example, it's a bit more controversial for sure, and you know,
they don't consider snowboarding as another sport.
No, they don't.
They think it's like in France, if you're like, you know, grow up and they do like uni courses specifically for like 7 years of just skiing, and that's like a whole course. That yeah, it's mad. And then they just was like, oh yeah, skiing's the main thing, and they'll just be like, but you can become like a snowboard instructor on the side, and it's so weird to like come into that sort of aspect, especially with ESF. I mean, not all of them are bad, but that's sort of the majority. Yeah. I'm hearing that they're changing it around a little bit, where they're trying to make snowboarding is more known, but it's still like very ski heavy because, you know, it's Europe, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was always one of the weird ones. Like we knew, and I was well aware with my time in New Zealand and through my instructing world and all that. They're like, did you know in France you got to be a ski instructor before you can be a snowboard instructor? They're like, what? Like, man, come on. All that stuff. But
yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's just how their culture's grown, and you know, it's getting better.
They're changing it.
Yeah, which is good. Yeah, so Scott, after kind of going from like your first big kind of resort, what did you do after that? Did you kind of go to more subsequent resources? Did you start a season?
Like I said, there was that Jackson trip was a big game changer for me. And then I went back to Minnesota, worked, went to school, did all that. But in the back of my mind, the goal was move out, get out west, do that. So I moved to Colorado in 95. And I lived down in Summit County for a year, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with Summit, but they're like A-Basin, Breckenridge, Keystone, Vail. They're all right in that general area. I did one season down that area. And then I was actually kind of trying to decide where to go. And I was tossed between going to Vail or Jackson. And there's a little town called Steamboat Springs that's about right on the way of the drive in between. And I stumbled upon that, and it was a cool town. And actually the guy I was with at the time, he was a friend of mine from high school, and we were planning to move together. And we had this, we got to be smart about this. And, you know, as smart as you can be when you're young and you're drinking age. And we were like, let's look and see how much a gallon of gas is, how much a gallon of milk is, and what an average cost of rent is. And we'll do a analysis on these couple of resorts. And it was Jackson, Vail, and Steamboat. And Steamboat came out more attractive. So that's where I ended up settling.
So how was that, the resort in Steamboat then? Like, what was the first impressions when kind of being there?
Yeah, it's The year I moved here was one of their biggest snow years. They got over 500 inches of snow that year. So it was a real attractive, and we're like northern Colorado. So we're actually just below the Wyoming border here. And we get a totally different weather pattern. In fact, like our marketing team at the resort trademarked the term champagne powder.
Really?
So we get that yeah.
It's mad.
It's like a really light, dry, fluffy snow. So the snow quality here is amazing. It's not the gnarliest mountain we have. It's not like the big, wide open bowls, rocky faces, but super awesome, like world class, probably some of the best ever tree runs. Like the trees go for days and days. You know, and as I got into teaching, it's a great place to teach because there's that diversity in like mellow, like it's pretty mellow mountain, but you can take newer students to more places. Do you know what I mean? So you really get to create an experience for them and hook them on snowboarding and get them involved in it. It's a great place to teach for sure.
What's your kind of favorite? What's your favorite like track or your favorite?
This is how you move around. Well, depending, like if you're with a student or you're just out with me free. Like if we were out just ripping around, you would do. We're gonna take this run to get to here, and then we're gonna cut into the trees there. Then we're gonna cross that run, which is gonna drop us into this gully, and then we're gonna come out there, because you don't do like like runs off
you
the
just
bottom.
mix
You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like mixing it up and zigzagging and crossing, and because it's the way the mountain is set up is it's got like a lower mountain and then two higher peaks, and there's aspects in all directions. So depending where the wind went, where the sun is, where this and that, you change where you're gonna ride all around the mountain.
Yeah,
you know.
I'm
So
guessing there must be
good.
I'm guessing there must be quite a big like backcountry culture there as well, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of the backcountry around here. There's like telemarking, teleskis, real popular because there's like some loops that you can go out and around. There's it's not like real big backcountry, but there's definitely access and little side country out some gates, come in lower, stuff like that. But like I said, it's not a super big rocky open bowls. It's more forestry, mellow cruiser, lots of little pillows and rock drops and stuff like that.
So you've hit So you've hit Steamboat with your friend. What was the first job you kind of applied for when you were out there?
I was working as a night auditor in a hotel.
Nice.
Like keeping the books and setting all the alarms and doing all that stuff. So I would come in at I'd work like 3 to 11. Or no, actually, I did the 3 to 11 for a while, and then I started doing the 11 to 7, which was horrible. I would sleep under the desk, answer the phone, do all whatever that was. And then I was trying to figure out what I was going to do when we actually got into winter and the mountains started. And because I was getting off work at 7 a.m, I was always I'd go grab some breakfast and I would go to the mountain, and I'd always see the instructors coming out. And I got to know a couple of them because they would do early morning trainings. And I got to ride with a few of them sometimes. And then they're like, hey, we're actually having a tryout for positions next week. You should try out for an instructor job. And scrape some money. You had to pay to actually try out, which is I think that's illegal now, but back in the day, that's what you did. And you paid some money, you tried out, and in the end, if they liked you or thought you were quality enough, they'd offer you a position. And I went through the tryout, got offered a position, and that started my coaching and instructing career.
Oh, no way. So you just kind of was like straight into the instructing, and then did you do like a qualification after that? Or was it
Yeah.
just like,
And that's how it works here in the States is you pretty much you get a job first. And then once you get a job, they train you to go get your qualifications. So it's a little bit of a different program than a lot of other countries.
that makes complete sense, yeah. Oh,
Because you guys got in the mountains there, so it's like it makes
Yeah.
sense from a company's point of view. They want the instructors, they want the jobs first, and then
Yeah.
they'd be like, training's fine after.
Yeah, they'll do some like internal training to get you to be able to do a suitable job, teaching beginners, doing this, doing that, and then they encourage you to go outside and get your qualifications outside of the ski school or whatever. So then you go and you get your level 1 and your kids accred or your freestyle, move to your level 2 and work your way through your qualification system.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. I didn't even thought it was like, because I'm just so used to.
You can do it the
yeah.
other way too.
Yeah.
But that is an option here. Obviously, you might be more attractive to a school if you come in with a qualification, but definitely used to be more about, hey, you can snowboard. Oh, you want to teach? Cool, we'll give you a job. Hey, you can get qualified in this and join this organization and take courses. That was like how you learned about the organization was through your ski schools.
So I'm guessing like the tryouts then are just like basically the instructors seeing like, oh, okay, you're technically good. Did you do any like teaching, like little kind of introductions to teaching that you were taught within the tryouts? What was the criteria like on that?
I think over the years the criteria has completely changed. I think what it was when I did it, they were more about, can you snowboard? Do you have hot feet? Do you look good in the jacket? Like that was the old school mentality. If we put this jacket on you, are people going to want to buy a lesson? That kind of thing. And now, fast forward 20 years, and it's more about like having people skills and being able to talk to people and communicate, and less about your riding skills. Because and it makes sense, because what do? We make we make people better snowboarders. We can't make people better people. So if you hire good people, you can make them better snowboarders. You know what I mean? It's like the pendulum is swung a bit more now, where it's about hiring, approachable people that have people skills, people that are friendly. You got to have obviously a minimum standard of riding, but that's not the benchmark anymore, because a lot of the schools have so much of a training budget and ongoing things. It's like the school's going to invest in you becoming a better snowboarder, but we need to get the right people in the right positions first.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's good call, because as soon as if you have like someone who's a really good rider but don't have the people skills, they're not going to be any use in business wise or even just in being friendly, and it doesn't rub off on the snowboarding community as a whole if you have a dick instructor essentially, so which isn't good.
Yep. And that's like I said, that it's swinging that way now, and you go back 20 years ago and it wasn't necessarily that as much. It was more about, like I said, hot feet. Oh, you can ollie that fence. Oh, you should be an instructor. Or you can hit that jump. Oh, you should be an instructor. That type of stuff, where now it's like, connecting with people, having empathy, helping people overcome fears, where it used to be like, just do it, man.
Just send it. Yeah.
There's a lot that send it attitude. And then obviously the clientele has changed a lot in that time frame as well. Back then you were dealing with more, male dominated 20 somethings. And now you've got moms, dads, kids, you've got down to 4 or 5-year-olds. So your clientele or your audience has grown and vastly changed. Therefore, the needs of the instructor need to change with that. You know what I mean?
Going from that tryout stage, and then moving on to the level 1. Can you vividly remember, Scott, your level 1 course? Well, it wouldn't necessarily. Would it be a level 1? Did you just kind of like went straight into?
It's level 1.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of like older like courses. It was kind of like the level 2. There was no level 1.
Right. No, we in ASI we always had
the level 1. Oh, great. So how was that first level 1 then? Like,
I put it off. I didn't do it my first year. Because I wasn't sure. You're not making very much money. I was also working at night. Had some other random jobs just to be able to pay the bills, do all that. And the snowboard school job, in all honesty, was more about getting a pass. Like, I was like, sweet, I got a free pass. And I was the guy that would show up to line up. And if they were like, hey, it's pretty slow today, who wants to go? I was like, me. And then I'd go ride all day. And I did that for like 2 years. And I worked very, very part-time, very casual, made all my money in my night jobs, spent most of my days on the mountain just riding. And then I started like actually getting into it and working with people. And I was like, man, this is actually really cool. Like watching somebody develop and grow a skill and gain confidence and go from being scared to wanting to do it. And so once I experienced that a handful of times and I got more into it, that's when I decided like, I'm going to do my certifications and take this a little bit more serious. So I didn't get certified I taught for 2 years before I even got certified. And then I think I did my level 1 and my level 2 in the same year because I had that year. I had 12 years of riding experience behind me. I had 2 years now of teaching behind me. And then I actually went in to start my qualifications.
Yeah. So can you remember all the criteria on that like level 1 course and kind of in the level 2 as well?
Yeah. I mean, it falls under 3. It still falls under the 3 main categories. And obviously going into my level 1, I was like, what is this? I don't even know what this means. But it was, it's a riding component, a teaching component, and a movement analysis component.
So we don't have that movement analysis component.
No,
it's
we just got
teaching and riding.
Yeah.
For level 1.
Yeah, those are the 3 components we have. And the riding component was a set checklist of skills that you needed to mark off. And then the teaching component was all the necessary stuff from a never ever up to linking turns. And then the movement analysis component was like a written test. You had to watch a video and break down like body movements related to phases of the turn and all that kind of stuff.
That's really interesting.
See, like we've been with other talking about other instructors doing that sort of test in other associations. Yeah. Basie doesn't have that, and I feel like that might be a sort of a thing to throw onto. Like, be like,
do they have it at a higher level though? Maybe not an entry level.
No,
but
it's sort of just not even at a high level. It sort of just comes as you teach. So you sort of your level 1, they don't really expect it as much, but it's still there. Like if you can spot someone, and then you progress more on the level 2, and they try and get it in your head because by then you should have some experience, and then it just sort of like it comes with the teach. I think because as soon as you do the teaching exam, you do your demonstration. Let's say an introduction to carving, get them to do traversing across the slope, and then someone might be like, oh, they're doing a toe edge carve to the right. They're breaking out their hips. That's why they're not getting that much edge angle. So then you have to spot that, tell them to do it, and then get them to redo it again. So that sort of like comes into play a little bit.
There's a component of it then, but it's not like itemized or pinpointed. Like ours is definitely pinpointed, and it's the idea behind that is obviously the riding is so you understand it and know it internally for yourself. The teaching is so that you can take it from, this is how I think about it for myself. The teaching is, now that I know what I'm doing, can I verbalize it and show somebody else? And then the movement analysis part is, well, why can't you do it? And you go, okay, I'm going to look at it and go, that's why you can't do it, because da 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 da. And then that's where we need to focus on making an adjustment or a change.
Okay. Yeah, that makes complete sense. It's kind of like it's reminding me a bit of like those three kind of categories kind of sitting difference between the language in terms of VAC, so like visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and you kind of like, is that what you guys were kind of aiming towards, or is that just kind of like open to interpretation?
That's been around way before me, those components. And I when I say this, like that was a Rocky Mountain. We have our organization has Rocky Mountain, the different categories, and I started in Rocky, and that was always been present in our process in Rocky Mountain.
So moving on to the level 2 then, like how was it in terms of a jump, and how like difficult did you find it from the previous level 1? I know probably not a lot, I'm guessing, due to you having that previous experience anyway, but yeah, like what was like the difference between the level 1 and 2 for you?
Yeah, obviously the riding requirements go up, and the level of teaching goes up, so everything is a notch higher. But the biggest thing, I honestly, when I did it, I don't remember the biggest thing. But now that I'm training other people for the current day stuff, I'll tell you what I see is the biggest thing now. Is there's a fundamental movement pattern change that we ask, which is all the level 1 stuff is a most extended move, so it's an up and over the board. And a level 2, we start introducing tasks where we do a most flex move, where we go down, we flex down into the board to do the turn. So there's a fundamental movement change that you have to understand and comprehend with your body.
What do you guys call that? It's because in Cassie we call that like down unweighted and up unweighted. Basically it's high crossover and low crossover. What is that? Is that similar, or?
It's similar. We have a up on weight and a down on weight, but we also have what we call that is a most extended at edge change or a most flexed at edge change. So basically comes to your joints. Are your joints opening? If they're opening, you're going to an extended position. If your joints are closing at initiation, you're going into a flexed position. And then the rate that you're doing it and the intensity that you're doing it, even though it's maybe a down on weight, it might then blend into a retraction move because of the intensity and the speed, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Kind of moving on to the level 2 then, how was more of the teaching side of the level 2, if you can remember it yourself? If not, I do want to I'm interested in just the level 2 as it is now as well.
Yeah, I honestly don't. I remember, I think it was sort of similar from what I recall, but I do know a lot more about how it runs now, because obviously I'm training people and I'm leading exams. And the big thing at the level 2 is now we're outside of that. The level 1 is getting people up to the point where they can link turns. And then we all know once you can link turns, what you can do on your snowboard expands way out. And those are the teaches for the level 2. So it's like intro to trees, intro to bumps, intro to carving, those are the different teach topics.
Like freestyle 180s, etc. Just like the basic freestyle stuff.
Intro to jumping, intro to a box. Those would be the type of teaches you would get for a level 2 teach now.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because obviously you're getting outside of that level 1 to 4 student, and you're getting into that level 5, 6, which is somebody that is maybe, it's a broad, you're like hey, do you want to get in the park? Do you want to get in the trees? Do you want to get off the groomer? Do you want to like get better on the groomer? There's a lot of different ways you can go, but it's still progressing.
Yeah, that's cool. And how was the more of the movement analysis and the level 2? What's different between the movement analysis on the level 1 to the level 2? Is that kind of just
the level 1 movement analysis currently is done on very, very low level. Like it's like the low tasks. It would be like the C turns, the first couple link turns on a green run. And the level 2 movement analysis will be more like that hacking your way down a bump run, or first time in powder, or like I said, right when you're starting to branch, you're going to get more of those type of, or maybe altering, maybe more of a open turn down the fall line, or a closed turn on something steeper. But it's not like I guess I would put it as if it's somebody that already knows how to snowboard and they're like, hey man, help me. Like that's the kind of rider that you're going to get. Like, I'm kind of stuck here. How do I get better? Those are the kind of riders you would get at your level 2 MA.
Yeah, I understand that. Like when you get past that point of learning how to turn and you've got a few hours underneath your belt, you were like, yeah, I've kind of got these turns down. What the hell do I do next? And then that's where, introduction to carving, steeps, variable terrain, kickers, all that shit. That makes it,
So it's that comprehension of a little bit more. I mean, your stance is still very important. Your movements are still very important, but you're also at that point, I find at this point, one of the most important parts of a lesson at this point, which I do think we miss a little bit, but in an exam situation, but when you're working like in a private lesson or a group lesson, just how to read terrain. Like this is a better option than that option because of this, and this. And do you know why you keep ending over on that side of the run? Because of this, and this. And once they start connecting some of those, they're like, oh, now they're making decisions to be where they want to be and put themselves in the right places. Therefore, it's more fun,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's making them look at more, as you say, more tactically in your woods, like thinking, oh, this slope's a bit more off camber because of that turn, or why did I chutter out there because I just went over that bump without thinking of riding round it instead of over it, in that sort of sense. Yeah.
So all those type of things are, I mean, to me, that's your level 2 instructor. That's where you should be honing in and being comfortable with.
Nice. Moving on to your experiences, did you think about doing the level 3 straight away, or did you kind of take some time off and just do teaching?
I did I think it was my 1 and 2 in the same year, and then I did my 3 the end of the following year.
Oh, straight into it, Scott. I love it.
And my plan was to get down to New Zealand.
Oh, cool.
And that's why my motivation was to get it done and get it not over with, but I needed that qualification to get the visa to get down. And I actually was unsuccessful. I passed my ride, I passed my teach, and I was unsuccessful in my movement analysis. And it was pretty crushing because I was like, oh man, now I can't go to New Zealand, this and that. And I was talking to some guys about it. And my old ski school director was actually roommates with the current ski school director in New Zealand at the time. And I didn't know any of this. And he's like, well, let me see what we can do. And then I did like a quick phone call interview, and I was able to get a job in New Zealand and get a visa with just my level 2, which I was grateful for. I had my level 2 done and 2 components of my level 3. Went down, had my first season down at Cornet Peak, and then came back that following year to North America and did my last part of my level 3.
Ah, nice. How did you find the ride and the teach modules, by the way, of the level 3?
I mean, they were hard. They were tough. It was like, you know, I think a lot of people go through this, and maybe it's changed over the years, but it was like, well, that's not how I like to snowboard. Why do I have to snowboard the way you want me to? I want to snowboard the way I want to. And so you have this struggle internally, but I get it now. Like, later I'm a trainer, examiner, national team member, all this. And it's like, the reason there's like very specific things that you need to do is because you need to show ownership of your movement. Not that this is how we want you to snowboard, but do you have the ability to do this? Because if you can, you're proving that you understand the mechanics of your board and your body and the snow conditions. And so then you change it. Hey, let's close that turn a little more. Let's make that one a little open. Can you comprehend and go, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean internally? What do I need to change to get that outcome? Because good snowboard, I mean, I always equate it to this, man. When at the end of the day, when some guys come in, or girls, whoever, and they're like, today was shit. They were like, it was a terrible day. And then another guy comes in, or girl, whatever, and they say, man, I had a great day. And you're like, how can this person on this hand say it's a shit day and this person say it's a good day? And the reason is, this person that says it's a good day adjusted how they ride to make it work that day. This person rides the way they always ride, and it didn't work that day. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, in that assessment, especially at the level 3, when they're asking for these very, very particular things, it's not because that's how they want you to ride, but they want you to need to know that you understand how to make the changes to make that outcome, so that the day that it might not be the best day to be on the snow, you're still going to be able to ride okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, for example, if it's a bit more of a, icy terrain, it's just been windy, you don't want to edge too much. You want to, a bit more rotation with the feet. Yeah,
So
and that
then,
jazz.
yeah, what if we take the edging away? What do we put in place of it?
Yeah.
And how do you make
juggling
that?
it?
Yeah.
How do you juggle it? Yeah. And if you have one way to ride and one only that way, and it works, you're a rock star in the condition that works for how you like on your day, which is like, obviously the easy one is the powder day. Everybody's a rock star on a powder day. You're like, yeah, today was awesome. And then when it's not, it gets to that afternoon of the powder day, and you're not riding it like you did the first 3 runs, because it's getting choppier, it's getting maybe the wind picked up, maybe, who knows. But you have to make some decisions and ride slightly different. And if you don't understand the mechanics or have the ability to do that, all of a sudden it becomes like, man, the morning was great, but then it got shitty in the afternoon. Well, did it really get shitty, or did you just not know how to adjust to it?
Yeah, I'm finding that at the moment, specifically with my freestyle, just because I'm so used to, and I've been taught all my life, using grip and being able to not counter rotate too much and all this stuff, and just getting into freestyle and getting the nick of it and doing all this stuff. I'm just like, oh, okay, don't put an edge in, Max. I just gotta like fight with my brain to not put an edge in. Try actually, oh yeah, I can counter rotate to bring the board around a bit more. It's just adapting and like making sure I'm getting used to that mindset as well, with how my body is kind of trying to naturally kind of adapt to that is definitely quite a jar.
Yeah, and it's that concept or idea of, through your qualifications, it doesn't matter what organization it is, you're learning skills, and then figure out when to apply those skills, like, and I think about this in our program, like in ASI, you think about level 1, level 2, level 3, and that kind of journey or process through. In your level 1, you're just figuring out, oh my God, there's a right way to stand on a snowboard. There's a balance point. There's this, so you're learning about that stuff. And then level 2, you're like, I need to ride very centered. And I don't know if you guys have heard this, when people are like, oh, he or she rides like an instructor. You can typically put your finger on it. That's a level 2 candidate, because at that stage, that's what you're doing. You're learning awesome stance, good balance, reference alignment. And the reason you need to own that is because the time you go to your level 3, you need to know when you need to be there and when you can be out of there. When can I cheat and not be in that spot? But can I always, no matter where I am, get back there? But if you don't know where there is, you're never going to get back there. And that's why the level 2 is so crucial to, it's like you go like this and you hone in to your level 2, and then your level 3, you kind of branch out from that aligned position and all that. And unfortunately, I can't speak for every organization, but I'm pretty sure it's across the world thing. Our biggest dropout in our organizations is level 2. So they're still on the journey in, but they never got to expand back out.
Moving on to New Zealand, I do want to go into detail your first season as an instructor in New Zealand. How did you find it? Like,
it was great. Like, I loved it. Like, I was snowboarding year round, When I was a kid, you'd watch all those like snowboard videos, and they would show people traveling the world, and you're like, man, I made it. Like, I'm traveling the world carrying my snowboard around, such a cool and unique feeling. And then, you do it year after year after year, and it just becomes part of your life. And there was quite a few years between Remarkables and Cornet in Steamboat. We probably had 15 to 20 instructors just going resort to resort, back and forth. So your questions earlier about that community piece, that was like a global community. Everybody would like split off, go do something when the season ended, and then we'd meet in Steamboat and we'd work together all year and hang out, live together, do all that stuff. And then everybody would split at the end of the Steamboat season, and then a month later we'd all show up in New Zealand and do it all. And there was like literally, I think 20 of us that did that from Steamboat to Cornet and Remarks for quite a few years. It was awesome.
And thinking of like all those kind of friends you've met up with and known around the world, I bet it's good just to like saying like, oh, I'm gonna go here for a holiday, I've got to do this work, and you just like see someone who's probably like there, and just like, oh yeah, no way, I can like meet up with them, or like I can see if we can arrange accommodation. Yeah,
in that crew of like 15 that I was talking about, I think 4 of them live in Steamboat full time now.
Yo, that's no way.
Sick.
They're still here, yeah. Like, got married to Americans, or they're here. They're doing it. And then I do see a handful of the other guys all around. I was actually in funny story. I was in New Zealand. This was been 3 seasons ago, the season before COVID. And I was the training manager up at Remarks, and I was out working with some school groups or something, working with the instructors, assigning. And one of the volunteer dads came up to me, and he started talking to me, and it was this guy Leon, who was in that crew. He did the Steamboat New Zealand thing for years. He Kiwi guy, and now he's like, his kids were in the school group program, and he was the volunteer dad. So like you said, that reconnecting with people around the world and different things, it's quite an amazing thing to be a part of stuff like that.
And moving on to kind of, before we kind of really touch upon the national technical team, when did you kind of really start thinking about, your examiner and training kind of certifications, your qualifications there?
Yeah. So I got that level 3 after that season in New Zealand, which I think would have been, could be wrong, but probably 98 or 99, somewhere in there. And then I taught for quite a few years, and then not actually got that, and then applied for an examiner position, started doing some level ones, stuff like that. And somebody's like, oh yeah, next year's like a national team tryout. And I was like, I didn't even really know what that was. Or
Nice.
and I was like, man, I should go for that too. And so I actually tried out for the team in 2000. And the tryout was in Salt Lake, or not, it was in Utah at Snowbird, which is in Salt Lake. And I went, we had a regional tryout for the Rocky Mountains, made that the selected team, and then moved on to the national tryout. And that was an eye-opener, just to see a whole nother level of teachers and instructors and riding and people from all over the country. I think there was like 60 people trying out for like 6 positions. So it was, and there was already cuts before that, and I didn't make it that year, but it was like eye-opening and like, wow, it was like an introduction to something that I was unaware of. And the way the team tryout works in the States is it's every 4 years. So then I was like, my goal, I was like, I'll be back in 2004 and I'm going to make this team. And so I just, and you know, people have this attitude of, oh, I got to train, I got to do this and I got to do that. And I kind of think the training is just doing what you do. The training is being good at your job, like pushing yourself as an educator, pushing yourself as an instructor, pushing yourself in your own riding. That is the training. Like when people are like, I need to like take time off work to train, I'm like, well, do you really? Because I think the work part is the training part, you know? So I didn't do any like major shifts in those 4 years. I just was like, I knew what the goal was. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to make the team. How can I grow as an instructor? How can I grow as so I started like inquiring about, hey, I want to run level 2 exams. What do I need to do? And I need to, I'm going to find out what goes on with the kids programs and in the freestyle programs, because all those things are going to make me better going into that, next tryout.
Yeah, and honestly, congrats on being on the national team, because we haven't really done a congratulations. I should have brought some champagne, Scott, but forgot it, unfortunately, mate. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Alex got some fireball. Good idea. But yeah, how did you find, like, once you kind of got selected into the national teams, how did you find that relief and the idea of like, yeah, I'm in?
So 2004 was the year I made the team, and that tryout was also in Snowbird. And I went into that like, man, I made it, and now it's time to change the world. Like, we're going to shake it up and we're going to change the world. That was kind of the attitude going in. And that team was 2004 to 2008. And in 2008, I was another tryout, and I tried out, because what happens is they will kind of wipe the slate clean. The whole team is done, and you got to re-earn your spot back on the team. So there was another tryout in 2008, and between 2004 and 2008, I learned a lot about the organization, and I learned a lot about the industry. Amazing time. And I realized how hard it really was going to be to change the world. And then, but I was not willing to give up on it. So 2008, I went back again and tried out. And then that one was more about, and it was kind of weird because there was a lot of other team members that were using what I saw from the ski side and the snowboard side as a team member was very, very different. The Alpine guys were moving on, and they were becoming GMs of mountains and ski school directors and like all that kind of stuff. And the snowboarders were leaving the industry. Like they weren't leaving the industry. They were leaving ski schools. A lot of people left. They would use the team as a networking thing or a platform, and like guys went on and took jobs at Burton, and guys went on and took jobs at Rosignol, and they were like, so it was really a weird time because I was watching the skiers use it as a platform to advance themselves in ski schools, and the snowboarders use it as a platform to advance themselves in the industry outside of snowboard schools. So that was my goal. Like, I was like, I'm going to give back. I'm going to be an awesome teacher. But between 2008 and 2012, I'm going to start looking for something outside of ski school. And I did that. And I worked as an educational director for Rocky Mountain. And I worked as a terrain park manager for a couple years. And then we got to the end of that term, and it came to another tryout year in 2012. And I was like, should I try out? Shouldn't I try out? And I was no longer a terrain park manager. I was no longer with the Rocky Mountain as an educational director. And I was like, I need to try back out because I know now where I belong. Like, I belong in teaching and educating. Like, I went away from it and I missed it. And it was, I tried some other things and I was like, this is where I belong, man. Like, and I came back, tried out again and made it. So we were on from 2012 to 2016. And then, and just kept producing educational material, content, involved with the organization. At this stage, we were doing a lot of our national standards, a lot of different things going on there. And then in 2016, I was preparing and getting ready to try out again, and actually applied and got offered the coach's position. So that's how I ended up in the coach's position. And then this coach position was awesome, and it was hard for me because I was transitioning from like a long-term team member to a coach. So there's definitely a dynamic change and a role change in there. And then obviously in the middle of all that, or towards the end of that, COVID hit, and this was our first team that actually was a 5-year team instead of a 4-year team. And then, like I said, we just had our selections a couple of weeks ago. A new team was named, a new coach. Eric Rolls, the new coach, with assistant coach Tony Macri. And there's a new team involved. And I was down there working with those guys, helping select the new team. And it was a bittersweet to be watching these guys run it and handpicking and putting my input on the team, and then like driving away, being like, good luck, guys. Because normally you pick the team and then the work starts, but this time was like, pick the team, walk away.
Yeah, love it. I want to quickly touch upon your job role and job position, just for the listeners out there, regarding the coach's position. And just kind of really kind of going into detail a bit more about that, if that's all right, Scott.
Yeah. Anything in particular you're wondering about?
No, just like the overall summary, mate, you know.
Yeah. So there's obviously there's the organization, which is ASI and PSIA. And then they have their goals and their initiatives and things that they want to accomplish. And then you have the divisions that you have to work with. And then you have snowboarding. Like, we got to be true to snowboarding, and we got to like represent snowboarders, and like, we can't lose that piece of it. So it's finding that balance between all of those things, and then using the team as the tool to create the education. What do we need to build? What do we need to look at? What do we need to figure out to stay in line with the organization's goals, staying true to snowboarding, meeting the needs of our membership, and meeting the needs of the divisions. So it's kind of that you're that juggling position where, like team members, like I said, to that 2004 year when I came in and changed the world, I had my vision of what I thought we should be doing. And I remember our coach at the time, Randy, was like, nope, that's not what we're doing. And we're like, why not? And he's like, that's not our job. That's not what we do as an organization. And I was like, but that's what we do as snowboarders. And he's like, it's bigger than being a snowboarder, So it's like, it's finding that balance of, some call it playing the game, whatever,
Oh, that's good, man. No, I just wanted to, quickly kind of summarize that. And before we move on kind of to the next segment, where do you see the future of ASI and PSIA? Like, do you have any goals that you kind of want to see implemented in the future? Or like, where do you want to see the organization heading?
So one of the big things that between that 2008, 2012 and on that team, Lane Clegg was our coach at that time. And one of the things we really brought forward to was that people skills. We always said in the ski schools, we were always like, hey, this is really important. But in our evaluation process and all this, we didn't really assess that part, And when we went to Ushuaia for interski that year, what we brought as a snowboard team to that event was a framework around people skills. And then later, when we went to Bulgaria for the next interski, we were able to, as an organization, create what we call the learning connection model. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but we took three key aspects that we thought about as instructors, like what makes a good instructor. Because you look at it, you got a brand new guy, new hire, turning requests, doing this and that, and then you got this like highly skilled veteran in the industry, full cert guy. Maybe he's not getting as many requests as this new hire, and you're like, well, what's going on here? And so we brainstormed a lot of that stuff for a long time. And the idea that the thing that kept coming up was that person that's a new hire that's rolling requests will roll somebody for a vacation, but they won't roll them year on year. Like the guest won't come back the following year. And you're like, well, why won't the guest come back the following year? And they're like, because that person had an amazing personality and they were fun to be around with. But then in the end, you go, what did we actually learn? You're like, well, so then you're questioning the value of a lesson. How much should we pay this and that? And then you go to that other side of the spectrum and you got the full cert guy that has been around for a long time, knows everything about everything, but maybe doesn't have the people skills or the connection skills with people. And this is the guy that maybe has a family that comes and they book him out the first day of every vacation as a refresher. So he gets a year-on-year business, but he doesn't get them a family to book them for a full week. Is that, you guys follow me? What I'm saying? So we kept coming up with that, with kind of that in our head, and we broke it down. And what it came down to is there's three components to a great there's three components to instructing that are super valuable and super important. And that is teaching skills, people skills, and technical skills. And as you go through your level 1, 2, and 3, those skills need to all rise together. Because if you have all the technical skills and you understand everything, but you can't break it down to a teaching component to share with somebody, or you don't know how to identify and connect with an individual through people skills, having all that information doesn't work. And if you have all the people skills in the world, and you're just a natural blah, 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 gossip, go, 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 you can only PS somebody for so long. And then you got to bring some technical into it. Do you know what I mean? So that's what we figured out on that kind of that 2012 to 2016 team, was that whole, we call that the learning connection model. And what we worked on that for a really long time. And what this new team is doing is really taking those concepts and those models out to the world and delivering them and showing them how to use it and breaking it down. I think that's going to be the really important aspect of the new team, one component, and then keeping up with everything else going on in the world as well. But that's like a heavy lift for the new team right now.
Oh, no way. That's so cool. I've never, because it's all in moderation, really, isn't it? And just making sure you're just kind of keeping it slow and keeping it steady, but also, definitely keeping it going, which is quite cool. I mean, we don't have anything like that really in Basie, do we? That I can think of.
Teaching technical.
Yeah.
I think the people skills just sort of
comes related,
just like the analysis is just, it comes as you just be an instructor. Like when I first started, I was not very good at people. I was getting used to talking, but then being an instructor has helped massively on, being sociable just in general. And, I've got like a tremendous gratitude of, going down this path and having Basie there, and being a snowboard instructor has helped massively in just the social side and just talking to people in general. And that's awesome.
I like that concept of people skills. Like, it's always kind of been there, but it's never been evaluated or it's never been educated. It's been something that you gain through experience. And we really challenged that, and we were like, can we teach people skills? Is that possible? And it was like we created a couple of bullet point statements. Like, one of them is like creating a two-way meaningful relationship. So it's like, having these little milestones and checkpoints for yourself. We're like, hey, is this a two-way relationship, or is this just me talking to them? So there's these little bullet points that we created that if you're following these somewhat as a formula, you should be providing good people skills. You know what I mean?
That's cool. Yeah, so you've got this like rough guide to really help kind of especially for like new people who are starting off, they can go back to the scrapbook and have a look before going into it.
People skills when I started was like, oh, we're gonna knock you down because you didn't take your goggles up when you introduced yourself. You need eye contact, put your goggles up. Like, that was something you would get knocked down for. But it was like, really, is that what people skills really is? And it's not about that. It's about that meaningful relationship, and how do you build trust, and all these, like, those type of things are the things that then create that feeling. And then you can start talking about managing fear better, and you're developing trust, and then you're using your technical skills to show them that, so it's that people, technical, and teaching. The teaching is how you deliver it. The technical is your comprehension and understanding of it. And then the people is connecting in it and delivering it to that particular individual that is standing in front of you right now.
Nice.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, cool, man. I want to move actually on to Go Snow now, and just that segment.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of a bit of a different turnaround, but I mean, we got really into the American Association, which I loved actually. That was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Go Snow, Scott. Like, let's talk about where that started off and what were your motives behind it.
So Sean and myself are the two co-founders of Go Snow. Sean Bellerby.
Hi, Sean. And if you're listening to this,
he actually started it, and then we had a mutual friend that was like introduced us and said, "Hey, you should meet Sean. He's got a really cool thing going on." And work through it. And at that time, it was an app, and it was a meetup app just to get people connected to go skiing and snowboarding. And then I got involved, and we were like, let's figure out how to make this bigger and do some different things. And where do we want to go with this business? And it's actually it's an online bookings platform for ski and snowboard instructors. So you can go on to your app store, Apple, iOS, whatever, download it. It's a free download. And once you're there, what you can do is you can scroll through the resorts that we're partnered with, and you can look at instructor profiles, what their qualifications are, what languages they speak, read a little bit about them as individuals. And again, we talk about people skills going from the instructor to the client. Well, it needs to go the other way too. So a client was like, hey, if somebody's like in their profile is like, I'm going to take you to the steepest, baddest, blah, 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 certain people are going to be like, hey, that's my guy. And then other people are going to be like, no way do I want to ride with that guy. And then they might swipe it and scroll to another person that says like, hey, I specialize in being slow and patient and taking my time. Somebody's like, hey, that's my girl. Like, that's who I want to ride with. So it's trying to help make that connection before the lesson even starts. That was the motive behind it. And we saw that at Go Snow, we saw that as a convenience thing. Like, hey, customers are going to like this. It's a tool for instructors to promote themselves, generate a little business for themselves. That was the whole model was, hey, we want guests to find instructors. We want them to find the right instructor. We want to sell it. That's why we have partners with the resorts, because the resorts involved. We're not selling a Go Snow product, we're selling a ski school product through Go Snow. And that was the whole motivation and goal from the start. And then COVID hit and we took a weird turn, and resorts are a bit slow to take on new things, and it was a hard uptake for resorts to want to get involved. That doesn't work with our current system and this and that. There was always an excuse not to get involved, and we viewed it as a benefit to the customer, a benefit to the instructor, and the resorts are involved. So overall, it's a win-win for everybody. And we definitely had some hurdles we had to overcome in that process. And like I said, then COVID hit, and everybody learned how to order food, order groceries, do everything on their phone. But what you still can't do is book a ski school lesson on a phone. You got to go wait in line, or you got to make a phone call. So that I feel right now there's a real opportunity moving forward, because our customers and our clients, everybody's used to buying everything on the phone now, or using their phone for everything. We need to offer ski school lessons and connect and make that an option, and make it a friendly experience and connect people with the right people. And that's our whole goal right from the start,
So what was like the first couple of resorts did you kind of partner up with? Was it just your locals, ones that you're with?
No, we had some resorts in New Zealand and Australia, and then we had some in Utah. So we had some great relationships going with resorts. When COVID hit and resorts were hesitant and didn't know if they were even going to operate, we actually decided to put a pause on our business. And now that we're more people are vaccinated, we have a better understanding of what the ski resort community is going to be capable of, what the resorts are going to be capable of. We're going to move in strong next year, with some sales initiatives over this summer. We just signed an agreement with Altera Resorts. We're selling Icon passes for them right now. and we're working on a relationship to connect those Icon Pass users to instructors. There's more developing on that, and hopefully that'll shape into something big and kind of relaunch Go Snow into some new resorts, and because it's definitely a need and it's the way the future is going. I mean, every other industry has gone there, and we should keep up, you know.
Yeah, I do feel like sometimes, especially like the ski industry, can be a bit behind with a lot of the stuff, especially like mainstream systems, and trying to keep it as simple yet effective, and you don't want any of that jargon that you have that you had like previously, where it was just not necessarily inconvenience for the client, but also inconvenience for the instructor as well. And you kind of want to make sure it's the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like all we're trying to do is give instructors a tool to promote themselves and book themselves. There's so many times where you're with a client on the hill, and if you said to them, hey, you guys want to ride tomorrow? And you can be like, hey, let's book it right now. And you could just pull it out on the chairlift. Because what tends to happen is people go, oh yeah, we want to go tomorrow. And they come down and they see their mates or their friends and they go have a beer, and then the ticket office closes. And then it's like, it just gets lost, you know? So there's that aspect of it. There's nobody wants to wait in lines anymore, especially when you got to be 6 feet apart. And there's like only so many people can come into the office at a time. There's just a lot of complications that are out there now. And the fact that most people are starting to do more things digitally and mobily, like we should be keeping up with that.
Definitely. And what do you see with the future of Go Snow? Did you want to, of course, I know you're going to have like different types of resorts to go to. You want to expand that opportunity. How big do you want to go with it?
I mean, our thing right now is we just want to make, whether it's a connection with Altera or just a connection with the industry, we just need to get the people that are visiting resorts easy access to get guides or instructors. Because what happens when you do that is, we know, as you guys are both instructors, when you create an awesome experience, people will come back. And whether they come back to that resort or they come back and they go to another resort, if we can get people to the cruise industry is whatever they're doing now. I don't know how they're going to recover from what's going on, but vacations, when people have choices to what to do with their downtime and their vacations, let's create the best experience we can, keep them in our industry, keep skiing and snowboarding thriving. And I know hand on heart that when you spend time with a quality instructor, you're gonna have more fun, and it's gonna entice you to want to come back and do it again. Whether that's learning something new or going to a new place on the mountain, or both, or whatever it is, every lesson and every client you're with, you create a unique experience.
Speaking about kind of going on to different lessons and tours and whatnot, I do want to move into Mint tours and kind of go from that. Just quickly before we kind of move on to the final thoughts. So Mint tours, Scott, please kind of explain what Mint tours do. Where are you in the company? And how long you've been with Mint tours?
So actually, back in the day when I was saying I first started working at Coronet Peak. What's that?
Back in the day, go for it. Yeah.
Back at Coronet Peak, those first couple of years, I met a guy named Jared who was working in the terrain park. Jared is now the owner of Mint Tours. They're based out of Australia. So I have a long history with those guys and their business, watched them develop and grow. And then about 4 years ago, we started talking about some tours in the US. And I led some tours in Mammoth and Jackson We offered a Colorado tour, just different things that were out there. And with the success of those, I was asked to start working in Japan and leading some tours over in Japan. So I was going over there and leading some tours with Mint over there as well. And that particular one that I was running over there, we were based out of Niseko, and we had a van. And there's a handful of resorts within 2 to 3 hours, good resorts, multiple. We would just pick the resort we wanted to go to based on the weather, the winds, the snow, load up the van. I'd watch what's going on, see what resort's going to be good, and then tell the guys, hey, come down, we're leaving at 7, we're going to be there by 9, or hey, it's going to be a slow start, this or that, let's sleep in, let's just ride the local resort, the Niseko today. So it's, there's everything from there. Mint, they offer, like, they do heli trips in Russia, they do split boarding in the fjords, like in Finland, and like they have a gamut of offerings, which is super cool. It's more of a lifestyle snow experience travel company. You get with like-minded people and you just go have an awesome time. And typically you'll have a guide or somebody that knows the area, knows the mountain, knows which restaurants to go to. And so it's like, instead of taking those first few days and trying to figure that all out, you're like, bang, charging from the first morning.
Damn. So what else do you kind of do? Let's say if you can run through like a normal day of a Mint tour for me. So like first wake up, do you guys meet all together for breakfast? Kind of planning out what the day is, and then
depends on the location and the trip, but typically, yeah, if we're at a hotel that has a breakfast or something, we'll meet, have a breakfast, or if we're staying in a house, and then we'll head up to the mountain together. And a lot of times what'll happen is if you do have a mixed ability group or whatever, your job basically is, this is how I look at it. If there's a group of people that want to rip around and charge, and then there's some people that don't quite have the ability to do that, just get people in the right places, because there's nothing worse than being in the wrong place and having a terrible time and knowing you just spent a lot of money to go on that trip. So it's like, hey, I watched you ride this morning. This is where I think you guys should go ride this afternoon. This will be a great area for you. I'm going to take a group over here. We're going to do a hike, this or that, whatever. So it's more about managing the people and getting them on the terrain that's more for them. And sometimes you have a group and you keep them all together. And sometimes you have a group and you split them up. And it's not like, it's very different than a lesson, because we're not teaching. We're not talking about improving by learning new skills. We're talking about improving by getting a different experience. Hey, we're going to hike up here. We're going to go ride that. That's what we go. And I get them there and then we go ride it, or, there might be that little bit of stuff that we talked about with that level 2-ish, where we're like, hey, this is a better line than that line. Go this way, not that way. But then I won't take the next step and explain why, because when you explain why, now you're moving into a lesson and you're not just guiding. And that's a hard thing for me in my head sometimes, just to ride people around, because sometimes I'm like, man, if I could take this guy aside and just show him like 3 or 4 things, he would have much better time. But again, that's not my job and that's not my role when I'm in that job, because I'm not teaching. I'm just leading a trip,
Yeah, you want to be the hype man. You want to be the guy who can share everything for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of like, what does Mint do and stand out more than like other touring companies? Like, what's their like USP Mint have?
What's their what?
Like,
Sorry.
what's their like unique selling point? What makes them stand out?
I think the unique selling point is their staff. We've got guides all over that are very knowledgeable of certain areas, and they specialize in the regions they are in. And when we start working a new region or a new area as a guide, we usually go with another group and watch and work with the existing guides before we end up going there with a group on our own. So it's the uniqueness, it's the small group. We're all like, when we do some of the women's camps, they have some mint chicks and some women camp stuff. Those run some pretty big numbers, but typically we run smaller groups, which obviously we've always run smaller groups, but now it's even more appealing post COVID stuff, like, we would run 5-6 people in a group, and that's it. We wouldn't do big, huge, large tours. But it's the uniqueness of the guides, the core snowboarding and skiing of it all, in that whole lifestyle piece of, going out. Like, we would tour different, like, when we go to Jackson, we would go to like some of the museums, like Brian Iguchi's museum, and we'd go to some of the snowboard factories, like Franco Snow Shapes is there, and Mikey's a great friend of mine, so he would like bring the guys in and show them how they make snowboards. And then we get like there'd be a longitude latitude print on a board, and then we'd go find that on the hill, and we were like, that board that was in the shop was taken from a tree that was taken down right here.
Oh, that's
So
sick.
we go find it, just
That's
unique
cool.
things like that. So using the resources in the snowboarding industry and then creating an awesome experience around it, not just going to a resort to ride the resort.
Oh, that's good. And wrapping up, kind of final thoughts, Scott. I know we've kind of touched upon this with the 3 components in terms of ASI, but what makes a good snowboard instructor in your opinion?
Yeah, like you said, the 3 components, but I think the passion for it and the love for being outside and snowboarding. And I mean, there's people that come into this job as like a gap year thing, and they're in and out. And then there's other people that just dive into it, or maybe they come in as a gap year and they figure out it's what they love, and then they figure out how to make a career out of it. But there's got to be an internal drive and passion from the individual, because it's not easy. You do have to make some sacrifices in your life. Like, I missed most of my good friends' weddings and kids getting born and all that because I was busy working, and I don't get to go home for Christmas and see my family because that's a busy time for me, So you gotta want it. You gotta have some love. You gotta have some drive, some passion, and you gotta be willing to work hard for it. If you want it, you can make it. But if you half want it, it's not going to work.
Yeah, you want to go full measure, right? No half measures. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the podcast, man. Before we kind of head off, where can people find you? Where can people kind of contact you? Yeah.
If you're looking for anything related to Go Snow, it's Scott at GoSnowPass.com. And then I can I throw out my personal email as well if anybody wants to reach out about any questions regarding Mint or Go Snow or just instruction in general. But that's Scott_Anfang, ANFANG at hotmail.com. Either one of those email addresses, you can get me. We can talk further. Get you connected, get you on a tour, get you connected through Go Snow, whatever it is, man. Because I'm part of my shift in role, retiring from national and all that is like I'm not leaving the industry, and I want people to be involved, and I'm looking for for my niche now, how can I help grow and do this on my own, not through the industry, and stay involved and not going anywhere. And I'm ready to show it,
Oh, nice.
What will leave there?